learning objectives will be we will learn about various pouches which are formed by the reflection of peritoneum around various viscera in abdomen, and we'll be dealing basically with the hepatorenal pouch, paracolic gutters, ligaments, recesses, and applied anatomy of peritoneum. So surgically we know that how the peritoneal cavity is divided into abdominal and the pelvic cavity, and then the peritoneal cavity is further divided into greater sac and the greater sac and lesser sac. Here we can see this, and the most of the peritoneal cavity is actually greater sac only. Then by transverse colon and its mesentery, that is transverse mesocolon, as we can see over here, the section of transverse colon, and right, so in transverse mesocolon, above this the greater sac is called as supracolic compartment, which includes, as we can see in this diagram, liver, stomach, spleen, and basically, and some part of duodenum is also there, and posteriorly the structures which are lying there, pancreas, kidney, suprarenals. Now the attachment of uh, liver to the diaphragm and the anterior abdominal wall by the reflection of peritoneum around liver, certain the spaces or the subdivisions of supracolic compartment they occur, and they are known as subphrenic spaces. The spaces are very important surgically and clinically, and they can actually tell us the path where the infection can go. If there is infection in one viscera, then it can go till which area of the greater sac, that is decided by this reflection of peritoneum and by the subphrenic spaces. And the infracolic compartment, it is lying below the transverse mesocolon, and it is divided into right and left spaces by the root of mesentery. Right, so let's study about these supracolic and the infracolic compartments one by one. So in this diagram we can appreciate that how the greater sac is divided into supracolic and the infracolic compartment, and supracolic compartment is then divided into various subphrenic spaces by the reflection of peritoneum around liver. Various ligaments, they are formed by the reflection of peritoneum around liver, namely falciform ligaments, coronary, and the triangular ligaments. And the area between these ligaments, which is formed by the reflection of peritoneum, they are known as subphrenic spaces. And the most important space we have here is the hepatorenal pouch or the hepatorenal space. Then infracolic compartment is divided by the root of mesentery into right and left part, and we have on either side of ascending and the descending colon, we have the gutters, right and left paracolic gutters. Now the largest recess is basically the lesser sac, which is lying behind the stomach and the lesser omentum, separated from the greater sac except through the, it is communicating through greater sac by means of foramen of Winslow. So in this diagram we can see the subphrenic spaces. There are two diagrams. First we will discuss the diagram labeled as A. The subphrenic spaces are formed by the reflection of peritoneum around liver and to the diaphragm, and the reflection from anterior abdominal wall to the liver. So there are certain ligaments of liver. One is falciform, right and left triangular, and superior and inferior coronary ligament. There are 4 intraperitoneal spaces, subphrenic spaces, and 2 extraperitoneal spaces. As we can see in this diagram, here basically we can see the intraperitoneal spaces, right and left, right anterior, right posterior, left anterior, and left posterior. So first we will discuss left anterior space. As we can see in this diagram, it is located anterior to the left triangular ligament, and if there is a abscess in this space, then it can come from the operation on the left sided viscera like stomach and spleen. Then we can see the left posterior space, which is nothing but the lesser sac. So we have seen that if there is any problem or if there is a perforation of the gastric ulcer, uh, then it can go into the lesser sac, and that fluid passes out through the epiploic foramen, and it can reach to the hepatorenal pouch. So this is the importance of the lesser sac, right? And then on the right side, right anterior space is there. This right anterior space uh, is located between the right lobe of liver and the diaphragm, in front of the superior layer of the coronary ligament and the right triangular ligament. And from where the infection can come to this space? From the right sided viscera, like the gallbladder or the vermiform appendix. And the fourth and the last intraperitoneal subphrenic space, the right posterior space, which is very important, and it is known as hepatorenal pouch or the Morrison's pouch, which we will discuss in detail later. Then we have extraperitoneal spaces, right and left. And left extraperitoneal space, it can be a site of abscess, left perinephric abscess. Then in a diagram given below, we can see how the infracolic compartment it is divided into right and left part by the oblique orientation of the root of mesentery. And we can appreciate small blue color triangles. The right infracolic space as it is a triangular space with its apex directed downwards, whereas uh, left space is a triangular space with its apex directed upwards. So we can see that both of them, these spaces, if there is infection, then they are confined. If there is infection is on the right side, then it is confined there only, whereas left side space can go upwards also. So we have after this we have gutters, right and left paracolic gutters. Right paracolic gutter is lying lateral to the ascending colon, and the left paracolic gutter is lying lateral to the descending colon. Now let's discuss the most important subphrenic space, that is the hepatorenal pouch or the Morrison's pouch. What are the boundaries? First of all, anteriorly it is bounded by the right lobe of liver and the gallbladder, and posteriorly it has kidney, the right kidney with right suprarenal gland, second part of duodenum, and hepatic flexure of colon, along with transverse major colon. Superiorly it is bounded by the coronary. By the inferior layer of the coronary ligament, and inferiorly it is open. It it is it is communicating with the general peritoneal cavity, and on left side it communicates with the omental bursa or the lesser sac, and on the right side it is limited by the diaphragm. So this is the hepatorenal pouch. So here we can see that hepatorenal pouch in supine position. If there is any pus or abscess in the hepatorenal pouch, right? So in the viscera like liver or the gallbladder, then the entire abscess it is where it is accumulated in the hepatorenal pouch. So it becomes the most dependent pouch in the supine position. Most dependent part of the abdominal cavity, we should say, in the supine position. Now here we can see that the pelvic cavity, if the patient is not in supine position, or he or she sits, then what happens? Then the fluid it accumulates in the pelvic cavity, right? So this is how the uh, we should always appreciate that which is the most dependent part of the abdominal cavity in supine posture, and which is the most dependent part of the pelvic cavity. Hepatorenal pouch becomes the dependent part of the abdominal cavity proper when the body is supine. And from where the infection can come in this pouch? From gallbladder, appendix, or the other organs in the region. And then we come to the so here we can see this hepatorenal pouch that it is continuous with the right paracolic gutter also, and its significance is that in the subdiaphragmatic infections the fluid it accumulates over here. Now we come to the pelvis, that what are the pouches which are formed in the male and female pelvis. Here we can see the female pelvis and the rectouterine pouch, which is of immense clinical importance, and it is also known as pouch of Douglas, which is formed by the reflection of peritoneum between rectum and uterus. And this rectouterine pouch, the floor is about 5.5 centimeter in front of the anus. It can be rectouterine pouch is 5.5 centimeter from the anus, and it becomes the most dependent part of the peritoneal cavity, right? If there is any infection. And here we can also appreciate second pouch, that is the uterovesical pouch between uterus and the urinary bladder. This is the male pelvis, and this arrow is in the rectovesical pouch. And here we have two pouches in female pelvis, rectouterine pouch and the vesicouterine pouch. Then in this dissected specimen, we can see the paracolic gutter, that how the person has lifted the ascending colon. So in between the lateral abdominal wall and the ascending colon, we have the right paracolic gutter, and whereas on the left side we have the left paracolic gutters. Now, what is the importance of these paracolic gutters? The infection can come to these paracolic gutters from hepatorenal pouch on the right side, as well as on the left side. It also comes from the left subphrenic spaces. The infection can reach to the paracolic uh, gutters, uh, and the left paracolic gutter opens freely into the pelvis, right? And it may be infected from the supracolic compartment or by an upward spread of infection from the pelvis. In either way, this left paracolic gutter can be infected. Whereas right paracolic gutter, it opens, as we have discussed, freely into the hepatorenal pouch, and it may be infected by a downward spread of infection from hepatorenal pouch or by an upward spread of infection from appendix. Cecum, and these are cecal or ileocecal recesses of sigmoid mesocolon, and obviously lesser sac, which is the largest recess. First we will discuss duodenal recesses. Here we can see superior one fold, we can see a duodenojejunal fold, superiorly located, and this recess is present in about 50% of subjects, and it is located at the level of L2 vertebra. Its orifice looks downwards. Then second recess which we can appreciate over here is the inferior duodenal recess, and it is produced by duodenomesocolic fold. It is present at the vertebral level L3, and it is present in about 75% of subjects. Its orifice looks upwards. So this is the site of duodenal recesses, superior and inferior. The next set of duodenal recesses is the duodenojejunal or the mesocolic recess. It is present in only 20% of subjects, and it is about 3 centimeter deep. Its orifice looks downwards and to the right. So here we can appreciate other recesses of duodenum also. Uh, we are left with retroduodenal recess, which is present occasionally, but it is largest of all the duodenal recesses, 8 to 10 centimeter deep, and its orifice looks to the left. Then we can appreciate paraduodenal recess also. It is present in about 20% of subjects. And one important thing, that is inferior mesenteric vein, is a very important relation of paraduodenal recess, and it has to be remembered while if we are we are treating hernias, we are doing surgical repair of hernia, then we have to remember this relation. So these are the duodenal recess, and here we can also appreciate one fibromuscular band which is known as ligament of Treves. It is present in the fetal life, and it can be present in some subjects as in adult life also. It extends from right cross of diaphragm to the duodenojejunal flexure, and it passes anterior to the aorta. And actually the length of the duodenojejunal this ligament of Treves, it decides the shape of duodenum. So this is paraduodenal recess, retroduodenal the largest. And now you have to practice this diagram, schematic diagram of the duodenal recesses. Here we can see superior duodenal recess, how it is facing downward, inferior, how it is facing upward. And then we have the retroduodenal, paraduodenal recess, duodenojejunal recess, and mesenterico-parietal recess, which is related with superior mesenteric vessels. Coming to the iliocecal recesses, we have superior, inferior, and retrocecal recess. Now, superior iliocecal recess is quite commonly present, and actually it is present just beneath the superior iliocecal fold, which is a vascular fold between ilium and the ascending colon, and its orifice looks downwards and to the left. Then we have, so this iliocecal fold is a vascular fold, you have to remember. Then we talk about next iliocecal recess, that is the inferior iliocecal recess, which is present beneath the inferior iliocecal fold of peritoneum, and this fold of this is known as bloodless fold of Treves. This inferior iliocecal fold is the bloodless fold of Treves, and orifice of this recess also looks downwards and to the left. And the third type of recess behind the cecum, which may occasionally contain appendix, is the retrocecal recess. Its orifice looks downwards. So these are the cecal recesses in a nutshell. Here we can see superior ileocecal recess under the vascular fold, inferior ileocecal recess under the bloodless folds of Treves, and retrocecal recess. Kindly practice this diagram, and then we have the intersigmoid recess of peritoneum also over here, which is
only one recess which is in presented relation with your sigmoid mesocolon, and it is constantly present in fetus. It lies behind the apex of sigmoid mesocolon and its orifice looks downwards, as we can appreciate in the diagram. Coming to the applied aspects of the peritoneum. Well, if we have certain conditions such as peptic ulcer perforation or disease of gallbladder or any pathology of appendix, then there will be abscess in the subphrenic space, which is known as subphrenic abscess, because of the accumulation of the pus. As we already know that these are the potential spaces, subphrenic spaces, where pus can accumulate from the neighboring viscera depending upon the position of the subphrenic space. And as we have seen that hepatorenal pouch is most commonly it is the most common site where the fluid accumulates in the infection of gallbladder disease, or in the case of appendix, because the hepatorenal pouch is the most dependent part of the abdominal cavity in supine posture. And oblique attachment of mesentery causes appendix infection to ascend upwards. Coming to the applied aspect of peritoneum, there is something which is known as laparoscopic examination, and it is basically done by puncturing a needle of laparoscope in the peritoneal cavity, through the help of which we can visualize the interior of the peritoneum. This procedure is known as laparoscope, and the instrument is laparoscopy is the procedure and the instrument is laparoscope. Then one another therapeutic use of peritoneal cavity, because it can accumulate large amount of fluids, is the peritoneal dialysis, which can be done. Then internal hernias, we have already seen that how these internal hernias they occur in the peritoneal recesses. Diagram of lesser sac is shown over here, that how ileal loop has herniated into the lesser sac. Now whenever we have to reduce such type of hernia, then we do not approach the lesser sac through epiploic foramen, because of so many important structures they are present in vicinity of the epiploic foramen, and it has to be approached to greater momentum. Then in next picture we can see peritonitis is there, which is the inflammation of peritoneal cavity. Then there is a condition known as hemoperitoneum, in which blood accumulates in the peritoneal cavity in case of peptic ulcer rupture or the rupture of any other blood vessel. And we have hemoperitoneum, which can be seen as black color shadow in this picture. It occurs because of rupture of hollow viscus and during laparoscopic surgery. Ascites can be seen in this picture, a girl affected by ascites, and the reason can be portal hypertension, tuberculosis, peritonitis, CCF, or malignancy. There are certain procedures they are there related with the peritoneum. Abdominal paracentesis is the puncturing of the anterior abdominal wall. It can be done through the puncture can be through the midline, and if any fluid has been accumulated, as we have seen in case of ascites, then it can be removed by this procedure. It is known as paracentesis. Culdecentesis is the abnormal fluid if it occurs in the pelvic cavity, usually in case of females behind the uterus. Then this can be done by culdecentesis. Laparoscopy we have already seen, and the dialysis we have already